Oh hey, I didn't see you there. How's it going? In this video, I'm going to be building this out of 3 cedar fence pickets. There's free plans in the description with a cut list to help you guys out if you guys want to build this yourselves. And you guys may be thinking, man, you're way too early. Well, guess what? Spring's just around the corner. If you guys are building these for yourselves or you're building them to sell to other people, now's the time to start putting them together. So let's go ahead and head inside. I'll show you how to throw this together. If you guys like this kind of stuff, be sure to subscribe. Like this video, it really helps me out. It allows me to make more videos like this. I'm going to be building bigger planter boxes, chicken coops, all sorts of stuff this spring. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so for this build, we're going to be using 3 cedar fence pickets. I bought these for about $3.50 a piece. I do know that if you buy them in bulk, you can get them for a lot cheaper. So first, we're going to make sure the saw is set up correctly. We're going to get the blade to where it's just above the board. And I'm going to make these first 2 cuts at 1 3/4 of an inch. We're just going to rip it right down the length of the board. These strips we're cutting here are going to make up the legs of the planter box and also the miter trim on the top. And once I have both of these strips cut, I'll adjust my table saw to 1 1/8 of an inch. This will be the 3rd strip we're cutting on this board, and this will be for the other half of the 4 legs. And now it's time for the amateur tip of the video, and that is to make sure that your fence is always locked in place before starting your cut. And after making this 3rd cut, that'll leave us with 4 pieces. 2 strips at 1 3/4 inch, 1 strip at 1 1/8 of an inch, and 1 tiny sliver at 5/8 of an inch. Now I'm going to take one of the 1 3/4 inch strips that I cut, and I'm going to make 3 separate cuts 16 inches long. That will leave me with 4 pieces at 16 inches long and 1 3/4 inch wide. I hope this is all making sense. Like I said, there's some free plans and a cut list in the description. So after watching this and looking at those, it should all be very clear and you guys can go build one for yourselves. Definitely don't want to get your shirt caught inside the saw blade, so always make sure it's buttoned up and close to your body. To make sure I have more accurate cuts on all my projects, I always take a sliver off the factory edge of the board before I measure and make my own cut. Most factory edges are pretty rough and not always at the correct angle. So once we have 4 pieces cut at 16 inches, from the 1 3/4 inch strip, we're going to move over to the 1 1/8 inch strip and cut 4 pieces from that as well. This is going to make up the other half of the legs. To speed things up, you can use your previously cut board. As long as you cut it correctly at the right length, you can use that board to mark the rest of your cuts. Now that I have all 4 of these pieces cut, I'm going to take my 5/8 of an inch sliver and make 2 pieces 12 inches long. This will be for the bottom ledge support piece under the box. Now that I have the 2 12-inch slivers cut, I'm going to take that other 1 3/4 of an inch strip that's still at its full length and cut 1 piece at 12 3/4 of an inch. This is going to be for the middle bottom of the box. Now moving on to the other 2 fence pickets that we have not touched yet, we're going to get a good clean slate here by taking off the factory edge of the bottom of both pickets. And what we're going to need here is 4 pieces at 14 inches long and 6 pieces at 12 3/4 inch long. So stacking both pickets on top of each other, making 2 cuts at 14 inches and 3 cuts at 12 3/4 inch is going to be the best way to do this and the way to make this box entirely out of only 3 fence pickets. These pieces are going to make up the sides and the inside of the box. So after I got all of these cut, I just made sure that I was cutting everything accurately and all of them were the exact same length. This is really going to help when you put the box together, keep everything square and the inside of your box at perfect 90-degree angles. Well, as perfect as you can make it, these are cedar fence pickets, so a lot of the boards, even though you can pick through them and try to pick the straightest ones, a lot of them do have cupping in them. Try to assemble them in a way where you're going to see as little of the cupping as possible. Thankfully with this design, the trim pieces will cover a lot of it, so the only gaps you're going to see will be inside of the box, but you're only going to see that as long as there's nothing inside of it planted, obviously. So now we're going to take 2 of the 14-inch long pieces, apply our Typemon 3, which is the waterproof version of Typemon. Since these are outdoor planters, I highly recommend using Typemon 3. And then we're going to take 2 of the 1 1/8 inch 16-inch leg pieces, and we're just going to glue it to these 2 14-inch pieces and use a 18 gauge brad nail to hold it in place. The nails do help structurally a little bit, but really they're just to keep the boards in place while the glue dries. That glue is going to be much stronger than the nails when it's all dry. Once you get these first 2 leg pieces on, your side should look something like this. We're gonna flip it on its side and we're gonna grab one of these 16-inch long 1 3/4 inch pieces. We're gonna do the exact same thing here. As you can see, we're gonna line it on the edge of the box, making sure it's flush with that 1 1/8 inch piece. You can use as many nails as you want. If you do shoot them in at an angle, they're less likely to come out after they've been sitting outside for a while. But I normally use 5 to 6 nails along the sides here. I like to make sure there's glue and nails all the way down the length of the leg. This will make sure that after sitting outside for a while, the 2 leg pieces won't peel away from each other, leaving a big gap. So in this clip here, I totally forgot to put my lav mic on, so the audio quality is terrible, so I'm going to spare you all the noise. But basically what I'm saying here is that my nail gun is leaking severely, and I wasn't sure how long it was going to last. It sounded like it was going to break any second, so I was giving you that warning. And then second, I had completely forgot that I was going to paint the leg pieces and the trim pieces before assembling the box. This was going to make it a lot faster, but since I forgot, the only thing to do was to just take some painter's tape, mask off the legs, paint it. But all the other leg pieces and trim pieces that I had not assembled yet, I'm going to paint with this Bear outdoor stain in the slate color. So we're going to paint all these first, let them dry, and then assemble the whole box together. All right, we've got all the pieces painted here for the legs. I got them around my heater here. Hopefully this will speed up the drying process, and then we can get back to assembling the box. As soon as it's assembled, which should only take a few more minutes, we can measure outside to outside of the box and then get our exact measurement for the mitered trim pieces on the top. So I'm gonna skip ahead to the legs being dry, and then we can finish assembling the box here. After peeling the painter's tape off, I noticed there was a little bit of bleed through. It's hard with this rough cedar wood because it is the fence pickets. It's got a very rough side to it. So I would recommend painting all of the leg and trim pieces before assembling it. This is going to save you a lot of time and give you a much cleaner finish. Alright, now that the paint's all dry, we're going to get back to putting this box together. We're going to take another one of our 1 3/4 inch leg pieces, apply glue all the way down the first side that we started putting together already, put it in place, make sure it's flush with that other leg piece, and then put some brad nails in just like this. There is going to be squeeze out. It's kind of inevitable whenever you're working with wood glue. I knew that I was going to have to take some paint and do some touch-ups at the end, but that's just kind of the name of the game. Whenever you add either paint or wood finish to a product, it's always going to take more time just to make sure it looks good at the end. The paint is not necessary. This is the look that I was going for, so I wanted to make sure that all the trim and legs were painted. But if you guys want to skip this step entirely, feel free. This does not change the function of the box, obviously, at all. So as you can see here, we've now taken the 12 3/4 inch fence picket pieces and are now gluing and nailing them to the side of the box. I would like to put 2 to 3 of these 1-inch brad nails per board into the trim pieces. This helps hold it in place well while the glue dries. Okay, so now that we have half the box assembled, we're going to move over to the other 14-inch fence picket pieces, and we're going to do the same thing we did at the beginning, taking our 1 1/8 of an inch leg pieces, gluing and nailing them to these two here on both sides, and then adding the 1 3/4 inch leg pieces, making sure that the edges are flush with the first leg pieces we put on. And I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely love to use a brad nail gun. These things are so fun. It's very tempting to just fill this entire planer box full of nails. All in all, you're going to use probably about 150 to 175 nails if you're putting a lot of nails in. You can get away with less. If you don't have a nail gun, you can definitely just use some 1-inch deck screws. The brad nail gun is definitely going to speed things up, but you can get away with just some regular screws as well. I'm all about doing what you can with what you got, so don't let the lack of a tool stop you from building something. Just figure out another way and get it done. So now that we have all the legs attached to the sides of the board, it's time to take those 2 little 12-inch strips that we cut. These will be flush to the bottom of the inside of the 14-inch fence picket pieces that we cut. So just to be clear, you will not be attaching these on the shorter sides of the box. You will be attaching it on the longer side, which is the 14-inch long pieces. These go on the inside because they are going to be the ledges the bottom of the box is going to sit on and attach to once we get all 4 sides put together. So I like to take a tape measure the top, measure the bottom. Because the cedar boards do have cupping, you will have gaps. I just want to make sure that the measurement at the top is the same as the measurement on the bottom, not paying as much attention to the gaps on the inside because it will be covered by dirt. I'm more concerned about everything being at 90 degrees when it's finished. But as you can see here, it's pretty self-explanatory. You're just going to take the 2 remaining side pieces that were cut at 12 3/4 of an inch, and we're just going to put that on the inside of the leg pieces, glue and nail in place just like we've done all the way up to this point. And here's what we got so far. Looking pretty good. As you can see, there's going to be some paint touch-ups like I mentioned earlier, but all in all, it's looking real good. I'm happy with it. As you can see here, there are some gaps like I was talking about earlier. Kind of hard to avoid this since we're working with some pretty rough sawn wood. Now that we got the outside assembled and put together, we're going to take the pieces we have remaining for the floor of the box. We should have 2 of the 12 3/4 inch fence picket pieces. Now that one 12-inch long by 1 3/4 inch wide little strip to put right in the middle. If they don't line up and they're a little too big, just take a sliver off with the miter saw, no big deal. If there is a bit of a gap, I like to try to center it from the outsides of the box and also center that middle piece so that the gaps on both sides of it are equal. Just makes it for a cleaner look, especially if you are trying to sell these to other people. I'm gonna do the exact same thing here, add glue to the ledge and then add some 1-inch brad nails. About 3 to each board on both sides and 2 on both sides of that middle strip. Just checking my angles here, making sure we're right at 90 degrees, getting it how I like it. I can squeeze the box together here before attaching the bottom boards. Once I get it how I like it, I'll shoot those brad nails in those base boards, and then that'll lock in our angles. This can be a pretty tight fit here depending on the kind of nail gun that you have. If you can't fit your nail gun inside, you can try shooting it up from the bottom. But worst case scenario, you don't add any nails to the bottom here, it's going to be just fine. The glue is going to hold it in place. And like I said earlier, it's going to be way stronger than those brad nails. So right now, I'm just going to measure all 4 sides of the box to make sure that all my cuts are going to be equal. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so instead of just measuring 2 sides and cutting 2 pieces per that measurement, I like to measure each side individually and get it right down to a 1/16 of an inch. I really didn't want any gaps in my miter cuts. So then taking it over to the miter saw, I'm going to set the saw to 45 degrees. And after I make a first cut at 45 degrees on the right side of the board to give me a starting angle, I'm going to flip the board over, measure left to right, and then in between each cut, all I have to do is rotate the board. This makes it so that I don't have to keep adjusting the saw from left to right. I can just set the saw at 45 degrees on my right and make all the cuts that way. I thought I had painted enough of the trim piece, but apparently I hadn't. No big deal. After I get it all put together, I have to come around and touch up with paint anyway, so I'll just cover this little spot here. I'm going to add glue to the entire top edge of the planter, add my miter trim pieces, make sure they're all lined up and good to go, make any adjustments if I need to. Then I'm going to take my nail gun and put 2 or 3 brad nails right up along where the mitered edges meet. This is going to be the most likely spot where they're going to peel up after being in the sun a long time. And then I add 2 or 3 nails in between the edges. Once all the nails are in, it's time just to do some final touch-ups with the paint. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, like I said, so I took my time on this. I really wanted it to look clean at the end, and here's the final result. There is a little bit of glue on the sides that I probably will go back and use some sandpaper on, but other than that, I think it turned out great. It was super simple, super easy, and a lot of fun to make. If you guys are looking to sell these things, right now is a great time to start building these and getting some inventory built up. You know, if they're priced right, you can make a quick buck there out on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. Feel free to use the plans, make as many as you want, sell as many as you can. I hope to help you guys out. And we have a lot more planned coming up here with the spring approaching. There's gonna be just tons of builds coming, so I'm pretty excited. So be sure to follow along for that. All right, well, I'm gonna go build a slightly bigger planter, and I'm also gonna go build a little window planter box. So videos coming shortly on that. Until next time, stay warm, go build something cool.